Hi, everyone. I'm here to give you your daily dose of devotion for the day, and I want to talk to you about fear. I want to tell you one of my greatest fears was to become a televangelist, and now I am one, whether I like it or not. I'm also going to tell you another story about fear. Last year in the city of Baltimore, the mayor of the city went on television and told everybody to be careful about parking next to white vans, because apparently there were people, men in those white vans, that were out to kidnap you or your children or harm you in some way. And when somebody asked him what was his source for all this, they wanted to know, which law enforcement grouping talked about this or put out the bulletin. He said none of them. He said, I learned it from Facebook. Which is kind of ironic because I remember seeing that post last year on my Facebook page. It was all about these guys who were parking near women or just parking in a parking lot, and supposedly they were the bad guys and they were out to kidnap people. And so they said, make sure you have your cell phone next to you and it's on alarm and all those kinds of things. And I wondered if the mayor had given any thought to the fact that every single day in the city of Baltimore, hundreds, maybe thousands of men, handymen, were going to work in white vans. And the purpose wasn't to kidnap women or children. The purpose was to fix plumbing, or as a carpenter, or as a ditch digger, or as some other kind of handiwork. They were just going to work. It's kind of amazing what fear will do. Maybe the lesson we learn from that is don't get your news from Facebook. It's also the lesson we learn is that fear can be an incredible force. And in this particular case, it wasn't a force for good. I want to talk to you today about that emotion of fear. And I've got a couple of thoughts for you, and it comes from Psalm 56, verses 3 to 4. It was a psalm that was written by David after he was kidnapped, after he was taken by the hated enemies, the Philistines. Now keep in mind, this wasn't something that might have happened. He's not boxing or shadow boxing with imaginary dragons. This is something, he's praying this prayer after the fact, after one of his greatest fears has been realized. And so this is what he says. He says, when I am afraid, I trust in you. In God, whose word I praise, in God I trust. I will not be afraid. What can mortal man do to me? I think the first thing I want you to notice in this verse is that he uses the word when. That's the first word he uses, is when. He doesn't say, I'm never going to be afraid, because that would be unrealistic. Fear, like every other emotion, is commonplace. You can't control your emotions. You can't control whether they're right or wrong, is what I'm trying to say. That fear is an emotion. It's neither right or wrong. And it's going to come and it's going to go. And the thing is about fear as an emotion, or any of our emotions, is we don't want to let it get out of control. And so when it comes to fear, what we want to do is we want to balance our fear with our faith. Many of you know that in the Bible, faith and trust go hand in hand. And what we have in this text is we have that antidote for fear, even when fear is legitimate, like it was for David. But the antidote to fear is we put our faith, we put our trust in God. Part of the problem, I think, for us when we're talking about fear or dealing with fear in our life is that we misunderstand really what it is. We misunderstand what trust is, what faith in God is. Some people think that faith in God is just positive thinking. In other words, we have a problem, we have a situation we can't deal with, and so we think, well, if I just think positive thoughts about it, then that's really faith. Some of us think that faith only comes when God requires great risks on our part, like he's sending us to New York City to evangelize all of the gangs in New York City. Some of us think that faith or trust is when God asks us to believe something that isn't even true. For example, the phrase, God helps them that helps themselves. Well, that's not even in the Bible, and it's definitely not true. But biblically speaking, faith is defined as trusting God enough to do what he says, even if we don't know what the outcome's going to be, even if in the short term the outcome isn't what we want. But we still put our trust and our faith in God. Here's the solution to overcoming fear. It's okay to be fearful. It's okay to have the emotion of fear, as long as you also have the discipline of obedience that goes with it. Because as long as you have the discipline of obedience, then what that does is that makes fear lose its stranglehold on us. Obedience is greater than fear. Obedience is what keeps fear in check. Because spiritually speaking, fear is only powerful when it causes us to take a shortcut in our spiritual life. Fear is only dangerous when it causes us to take things into our own hands and we say we're going to do it my way instead of God's way. That's the dark side of fear. And that's what the enemy wants to put into our hearts. He wants to put into our hearts that fear that says God can't handle it, so you need to do it on your own. But the solution to fear is always the same. David says, when I'm afraid, I'm going to put my trust in you. I'm going to trust you enough to do what you say, no matter what the emotion, no matter what kind of emotion I'm experiencing at the moment. And that's how you walk through this valley that we're in, that we're all experiencing right now.